That. Praise God. These are awesome days, of course, and we're trusting that more than ever before, you're going to learn how to trust Jesus Christ and not just give in like so many seem to do to the emotions around us. If you have any questions, you can still text my wife, and we can deal with those during the broadcast sometime. I want to start with Hebrews chapter 11. It says, now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not yet seen. I'm going to say that again. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, and the Bible says an absolute confidence. In other words, you can't be shaken from your hope, and conviction about the things not yet seen. We're in the most unusual day in the history of our entire country. Never before have we seen the kind of division, hatred, opposition to one another, total lack of cooperation almost between parties. By the way, it was never meant to be that way. It was meant to be that we would be this glorious, amazing nation that God called apart because we had a common goal, and that was we wanted to be spiritually and religiously free. Of course, we wanted to have freedom in other ways, but when you haven't had any freedom, apparently the one that struck those people in that generation the most serious was the freedom to worship God. And somehow we have lost our way. I mean, it's crazy. So, what are we talking about? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not yet seen. By it, men of old gained approval. The Bible says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. And today there are so many words, I guess, that are being said. People are listening to words that are being said, but that's not the word he was talking about. He was talking about the word of reconciliation. He was talking about the word of God. He was talking about the only way that you're really going to get faith to believe that wonderful things can happen, because that's the only thing you really ought to be believing for. I mean, today, it seems, I've talked to people literally, just today, people literally all across the country, and it seems like we're a house divided. And the Bible is pretty clear about that too. It says a house divided against itself cannot stand. Everybody knows that. You can't have mom and dad all the time in opposition to one another. That's not going to work. And, the children will eventually rebel. And, of course, we're in a situation that is very much like that at this particular time. I think if we want to, I'm actually speaking faith. Do you think we can be healed? Do you think we can be brought together? Instead, I started by saying there seems to be so much division, so much conflict, so many extreme views. I don't mean like so many. There's really just an extreme view on the one side and an extreme view on the other side about almost everything. It seems like some people, it seems to be very clear. And other people, it seems very clear that it's not just a little wrong, it's all wrong. We did have some questions, and I'm going to read those in just a moment. And I'm going to start with one that deals with the destruction of these statues that we've been seeing in recent days. It says, by faith Enoch was taken up so that he would not see death. And he was not found because God took him up, for he obtained the witness that before his being taken up, he was pleasing to God. Pleasing to God. God didn't erase him, remove him, because he was a violator. He came and got him because he was so pleasing. So, can you imagine? He walked with God, the Bible tells us, 300 years, and then he was not. He was seeking God day after day after day after day after day. Not seeking Enoch, not seeking what Enoch wanted. He was seeking God. And God found him so pleasing that finally he gave him the desire of his heart. And the desire of his heart, obviously, was, I just want to be with you. That's all I want to be. I just want to be with you. I don't think he wanted to escape. I don't think he wanted to get off the planet. I think he just loved God that much. That's incredible. But that was a faith move on his part. He chased God 300 years and walked with God every day and never wavered. Wow. I don't know. I think this is a word for today. I think somebody ought to say that to these people. So anyway, in verse 6, and then we'll answer a question or two, and then we'll come back to this verse again. And without faith it is impossible to please him, for he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. So, if the faith that we really need, the only way out of this is I'm going to have to learn how to trust God, and I'm going to have to hear what God is saying. I'm going to have to quiet myself enough to listen and not just select some part of what he says or another part of what he says and focus on that and forget all the rest. You know, you can't hate people and say, I love my brother. That's not possible. In case nobody noticed, we're living on a planet that is a globe. It's round. I guess there's a way off. People have taken it. We watched the crew of a rocket ship that took off and was launched. It was almost lost because rioting was more important, but they took off and they went up to the International Space Station, and they're still up there, and they're going to be up there some time yet. And that should have been something that made us proud, whether we like the quote-unquote space travel or not, but at least they put forth great effort, and they were very heroic, and this is mostly done by private funds for the first time in human history, and by private ingenuity even. And there must have been something in that we could have just celebrated as an achievement, recognizing that it was a great achievement. It might not be my achievement or what I'm working for, but that still was a great achievement. I think when we get in danger of remembering great achievement and people that accomplish great things, we're in real danger. We're in a serious danger. So I've got two questions I'm going to start with. What were those?
Several of them. If we know who is funding the rioting,
Okay, if we know who is funding the rioting currently,
why are we not prosecuting them?
why are we not prosecuting them? That's a very good question, because it would seem to me, you know, it usually is true that the people that get provoked into taking action or get paid for it. If you get paid for it, you're a mercenary. Are not the ones that are really causing the problem. Somebody else caused the problem before that. So why are we not prosecuting them? There's only a couple of answers to that, and I don't like any of them. But what if they're being funded by uh, organizations that look at the opportunity that we have before us? The opportunity being that you've got people that have been confined for more than 3 months, now 4 months, in a lot of parts of the country. A lot of the country hasn't even opened yet. And if they weren't confined, they had no place to go because their businesses, all of the businesses they would go to, were closed. So if that's true, you're getting a little frustrated. I heard somebody today say that, for instance, well, you gotta expect these riots. It's like a cycle, you know, it's like summer, fall, winter, spring. So now it's warm, and when it's warm, you gotta expect riots. And I'm like, no, you don't have to expect riots. Why don't you expect to go to a museum? Or why don't you expect to go to a park? Or why don't you expect to see a lot of people out enjoying the sunshine? Or why don't you expect to see black people, white people, brown people, yellow people, red people walking around together in a normal environment, going into a store without fear? Wouldn't that be a more normal picture for you to expect to see? But that's not what we see. So we see all this rioting, and many of us have asked, well, why don't they stop this? Well, because you can't stop it, because that's a healthy protest, and they want to do away with the police. Well, of course they want to do away with the police, because the police are the only ones that are out there that enforce the laws. And they don't like laws. They would like to be able to do whatever they feel they can do or want to do. And if somebody told them, you can loot, you can destroy, you'll get away with it, you won't be arrested. Now, number one, if there was somebody like that, and they're not going to be out protesting, they're not going to be looting, and we knew who they were, then why can't we prosecute them? Well, I think they're working on that, actually, to be honest with you. They're trying to chase the money trail. And, find out who's providing this. Some of you noticed or will remember. See, we have such short memories. We haven't had a really major riot now in like 2 weeks, so we've almost forgot about it. But do you remember that they showed pallets? You know what a pallet is? 4x4 wooden of bricks that were dropped in city streets. Now, wait a minute, they weren't there that night until somebody came by and dropped them from a truck, probably using equipment. You know, something that weighs a lot. And they dropped these pallets of bricks. And some of them, they said, the pallets had already had the bricks cut in half. You know, because you wouldn't want to get a weak rioter that couldn't throw a whole brick. Again, the question was, if we know who's behind this, why don't we arrest them? Well, let's talk about first, and then I'm going to back up from there. Let's talk about all the cities where the rioting took place. Whether you like it or not, they all happened in liberal cities. In other words, somebody told somebody that that city would be a good city to go to because nobody's going to really do anything about it. New York was one, Chicago was one, Minneapolis was one, LA was one. So I mean, it was interesting where these things happen. Now, those are not that's not the only cities that there was any rioting in. There was more. Washington D.C. was one. I'm sorry, there were quite a few, but they all had very liberal governments. By that I mean if they didn't have the exact law that New York had, where if you got arrested, you really were not gonna, nothing was gonna happen, because they're gonna take you in. The police arrested up to 600 people a night in New York City and brought them to various police stations. And then the rule of law in New York City was that unless it's murder, violent assault that you feel like you can prove, just simple looting, just simple ransacking, just simple, we don't know who threw the Molotov cocktail, but somebody did, and they torched the store and they burned down buildings, and all of that was going on, but we can't prove it was them. But we did catch all these people running out of stores with stuff. So they're looters, they're robbers, they're thieves, and we give them a ticket, like you get for parking wrong. And it says, report for court on such and such a date. Do you promise? And then they let them go. And that's absolutely holding no one to accountability that's on the street. Somebody told them that. Somebody knew what city to do that in. They tried to do some things in other cities and that didn't have those kinds of mayors, and that didn't work. Well, why not? Well, because somebody stopped them. And they knew that. And so they knew that what cities were going to work and what cities were not. And so part of the answer, why aren't we prosecuting them, is they are them. They are people of massive influence are behind this. I said before, the Revelation 18 describes the kind of people that are behind all of that. And he describes it as the great whore Babylon. Obviously, it is not a woman. It is not a sexual thing at all. It's a violent thing, as a matter of fact, as you read it in Revelation 18. And it's made up of these massive international financiers. And we don't want to believe any of that. And we would be very critical of that, and it's going to be very hard to prove. But they are chasing the money trail back. And I believe that if they get it back to people, I hope they get it back to the real people. It seems to me that several names have come up this year in 2016 when President Trump first took office and there was rioting and everything. They said at that time that a lot of that was sponsored by George Soros and others like him. So you can't just pinpoint him, but if his name keeps coming up, I have to believe that they're at least checking into that, and it's come up again this year, all this time later. And strangely enough, George Soros is a socialist. He's really a globalist. That's a term that you ought to get very, very, very familiar with, because we have a great war going on all over the world. It's not just in America. It's a global war driven by the group described in Revelation 18, the international financiers, the money people, the merchants that have now spread across the globe and are raking in millions off of people all around the world, because it's easy to do it in many countries. And if they could just go completely global, they would be able to have their businesses in every country. And that is a sad situation. But so we keep coming back to debt, lack, greed, poverty, lust, as what drives a lot of people. I can't give you a bunch of names, although I think there are certain people that if I were the government I would be looking at. But you can't touch them because they're politically correct and they're politically connected. The very governments in those cities that let their cities burn, they violated the Constitution in the United States. They failed miserably their citizens. I don't care what state it was. I don't care what city it is. They did it. They all failed. They gave in to the mob, so somebody owned them, or somebody that they are working with, in agreement with, they have been persuaded that even though chaos looks like it's happening, and we're so sorry it's happening in your city, it's a good thing if we can just bring down the government and open the borders and go worldwide. Eventually we will have peace and rain. It will be wonderful. It will be like a worldwide chop. So the answer is they're too politically connected right now. There's a great resistance. You've seen it. President Trump really can't hardly get anything done because everything he does, they scream like he's trying to kill everybody. And yet he's done more than any other president in the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years, than anybody before him in that amount of time, particularly giving all the restraints. It shocks me that they are asking, well, why did he want to replace this attorney in New York? Well, he was an appointee of another administration that was in direct opposition to President Trump. And if COVID-19 and the rioting and all of that hadn't come down, we'd be hearing more about it. But right now, we don't want to hear anything more about anything. We're so worried about what's happening every day that we could just forget about all that. Forget that for the first 3.5 years of Trump's presidency, he had to fight impeachment proceedings and lies about Russia and all of that, and it all proved false. And so there's your problem. The problem is our house is divided. America is divided. You've got political people that were elected. So really it's all of our faults. They were elected in their states or in the municipalities, and they're covering. And they know who those people are. I guarantee you. There's not a mayor that doesn't know. Couldn't give you a list much more accurate than I could. So I guess that's the answer to that question. All right, next question.
With COVID reports on the rise again, do you see the governors trying to lock us down again? And if so, what could we do to resist it?
Okay, with the COVID-19 report on the increase reported, the quote-unquote spike in states, do you see governors attempting to lock us down again? Yes, absolutely. I said this a while ago, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's COVID-19 or the next COVID that comes down the road. I mean, you realize there's more than 140 COVIDs, those are viruses, of a particular kind that attack a certain way that make them very good for weapons, and if they're genetically altered. And so that's what they are actually working on in the Wuhan, and there's 3 labs in Wuhan, China. I'm sorry, but that's just true. Of the 3, one is a research facility, one is genetically altering various viruses, and the one that COVID-19 got out of, is run by the Communist Party of China, not the people, the party, and expressly to genetically engineer COVID viruses to see how they can be used as a weapon against human beings. So I'm sorry, China's not your friend. If everything you own and wear is Chinese, I feel bad for you. But the answer is, or the question was, do you see them trying to lock us down again? And I know another part of that question is, then what do we do? And what are you going to, well, you better decide. Because whether it's this one, and if they can intimidate you enough, and there was a tremendous intimidating factor, we could pause that. There's a tremendous intimidating factor that affected the attendance at that Trump rally. And although they still had 13,000 people there, and he called them, President Trump recognized what's going on, very sharp guy, and he called them warriors for coming out. You know, you're going to have to decide. What are you going to do the next time something comes down the road? And we found out that we shouldn't have been locked down in the first place. We found out schools never should have stopped. I mean, if you're a school teacher over a certain age, you ought to have been given a furlough, given time off, whatever. But other than that, it should have never stopped. We now know that. The science says that. But we're not following the science today. The science today is still the most effective thing if you don't want to get the flu, is don't get around somebody with the flu. Yeah, but I didn't know they had the flu. Yeah, but you were around them, and you were around them consistently, and you were around them for a long time. And when they coughed on you, I think we're smarter than that. I think we figured it out. I think we really figured it out. You know, I don't want to be around people like that. I think we really figured out. You know, we got to protect people in nursing homes and long care facilities and older people. Most of the COVID-19 deaths still are in the 75 and up age group. I mean, come on. There should have never been a shutdown. So, and it almost destroyed us. It almost destroyed our whole country. And actually it is destroying our country. Even since most of the states are now open, now this fear is coming of this second. It's not a second, it's not even really a true spike. We have done almost 26 million tests of COVID-19. So if you're looking for something and you look for it once, or you look for it 26 million times, do you think you'll find more of it? Sure. According to the governor of the state of Florida, which is one of those states that whoever they are, is saying is under major siege. The governor said the vast majority of those cases that test positive are asymptomatic. The figure I heard went from 80 to 90% across the board in all the states that had spikes, because those states are very aggressive about testing. And as they've done that, it's not just tests. There are still people getting COVID. There are people that get flu even when it's not flu season. I mean, there's people that get old and die. There's people that, but it's sad. Number one, there's no way in the world that we can possibly be expected to believe the figure on any of those deaths or anything, because they don't explain anything. Well, there were 4,000 new COVID cases in Florida one day. Oh my God, lock down everything. Go home, close your door. Foolishness. 80 to 90% didn't even know they had it. They were tested, and apparently sometime they got COVID, didn't even know it, never ran a fever because they were healthy and all the rest of that stuff. You know, and I understand, by the way, there's a major deal every time something like this happens. A teenager died of COVID, 17 years old, probably in perfect health, a magnificent physical specimen, no underlying cause. Listen, too many places have falsely reported COVID death simply because when autopsies came, they found out they either had COVID at one time, that it was not the cause of death. The cause of death was severe respiratory arrest, heart failure, all those kinds of things. And I just wish we could get some honest, straightforward, how about getting the statistics right, instead of somebody twisting it to try to frighten people so they get manipulated and intimidated so you can dominate them. I started on my last broadcast and said that's what Galatians talks about and warns us in chapter 3, you foolish Galatians. Back then, who is it that is manipulating you, intimidating you with the purpose of dominating you? They're trying to get you to do something you would never normally do. Give up your livelihood. Quit, run, hide, lock down. So I don't know the answer to the one part of the question. What are we going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I don't even feel bad. I didn't lock down. I wasn't afraid. Fear is not a factor for me. You know, fear is a spirit, and I'm not giving into it. And I'm not rebellious. We shut our church. We closed down. We went over the internet. And God, what man means for evil, God's using for good. I pray to God I'm helping somebody even tonight. And that's our whole goal. That's what we want to do. But, I mean, you know, come on. We got to get more real. Another factor in that is, what about all these statues that are being torn down? Listen, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make, please don't get confused. This is not racism. This might be some racists, some people who are racist. I don't care the color of their skin. Because that racism in that context really means prejudice. I'm not prejudiced against anybody. I love everybody. Everybody loves me because I'm so wonderful. But wouldn't that be a better way to live? But they're not living that way. So they want to do away with any Confederate statue. Because after all, never happened. Wasn't that important. Wasn't that big of a deal. Most of them don't even know what the Civil War really was caused by. I mean, it wasn't just about racism or black and white issue or slavery. It wasn't about that. You know, but I mean, it became about that. That became a topic. That became important. And that was very important to people like Abraham Lincoln, whose statue they tore down, you know, and all of that. He was the great emancipator, in case you missed. And so it makes no sense. They've torn down George Washington because he owned slaves. Thomas Jefferson, so quiet. That never happened. We're ashamed of them. Yeah, that was the father of our country, but not really. We didn't start that. We started in 1619 when the Spanish came. Wow, really? I didn't know they named this the United States of America. A place where there would be justice and freedom for all, where we could find a place where everyone could live together and love one another, like this country has been saying and finally doing much of in recent years. I mean, it took us years to get here. People gave their lives to get here. They fought for that flag to get here. They didn't fight for the right for you to kneel down and gnaw it, spit on it, wrap it around a statue's head and set it on fire. You can show disrespect and dishonor all you want, but that's all it is. All you're doing is showing many of us, you just have no idea what respect and honor are. I was talking with my wife earlier and I said, I've lived long enough that I don't remember firsthand or anything the Holocaust. But I've been in Holocaust museums all over the world. Israel, Germany, all over. That'd be the two kind of key places, don't you think?
Latvia.
And Latvia and, Europe, so here in America. I mean, come on. And do you know that they're trying to scrub that and say it never happened? No big deal. And it was just one people. So go ahead, destroy all the remembrance of history. Try to rewrite history. It doesn't change it. It still happened. Somebody's going to know. Somebody's going to remember. We'll pass it by word of mouth if we have to. And tell people the truth. Our educators failed us for the last 50 years. We let the socialist mindset come into our universities and absolutely corrupt our kids. And now we're upset because they're misbehaving. No, they just are looking for guidance. They've been deceived. And somebody's got to tell them it's wrong. It's like the Confederate War was horrible. It was the only time in our nation's history up till today, and I don't know what's going to happen, when we did not divide against ourselves like that, and we brother fought against brother. God had to be offended. He had to be. There was a different way. There was a different path to freedom than what we took on that. That was the most deaths that we suffered in any war. That's terrible. So anyway, yes, people will try to do this again. Yes, it'll be wrong that they're not arrested and tried. I hope they will be. I hope the people that are behind this, the major people supporting it. I've been saying for a long time, listen, I don't think anybody ought to be oppressed, period. But I don't think many people are. I think it's mostly a lie. There's more job opportunities, or there were, pardon me, I'll correct myself. There were, up until 3.5 months ago, more opportunities for more people of whatever color, race, kindred, creed, culture that you can think of than ever before in America. That's why everybody wanted to come here. So, well, we ran out of time again, but we're going to try again next week. God bless you. We love you. We're praying for you. Enjoy a great hour of prayer. We need it.